was me, age 7. I thought fashion was magic. Turns out it's a lot more complicated than that. I had a blog at 7 talking about clothes. Back then, I didn't know about greenwashing or fast fashion or what it actually costs to make a $5 shirt. And now I do, and I'm trying to do better. So, welcome to the Lexy Show, Fashion That Gives a Damn. I'm Lexi Silverstein, and this show is for anyone who loves fashion and is done pretending the industry is fine. Every week, we go deeper so you can shop smarter, spend better, and stop getting played. Now, let's get back to today's guest. Today, I'm talking with Drew Shula, founder and CEO of Verdical Group, a nationally leading sustainability consulting firm specializing in green building certifications, engineering services, ESG, net zero strategy, and events since 2012. He is also the founder of the Net Zero Conference, one of the world's largest events focused on building a net zero future. Drew, welcome. I know that you had mentioned this in the beginning, but you grew up in Maine and have said that being surrounded by nature shaped the way that you think about sustainability. So, was there a specific moment when this kind of sustainability, the environment, all this stuff became personal to you?
I love that question, Lexi. I certainly have it growing up in a real small town called Belfast, Maine. Not a lot of people have even been to Maine, so I'm always excited when people have been here, but it's a big state with very few people, about 1 million people in the whole state. It's absolutely beautiful nature here, and the Maine woods are famous. Thoreau lived in the Maine woods and built his cabin. And just growing up in Maine, I grew up 10 miles outside of the nearest town. We had 40 acres of land. We had a beaver dam on the property. There was foxes that lived across the street and all this wildlife. And I would just roam around outdoors for hours and hours as a kid, just walking through the woods. So I had this really deep connection to nature. That's just how I grew up, and the seasons, and I don't know, it just was so natural to want to do work that helped to protect the environment. I don't think it was like a specific moment ever, but just that deep connection from growing up as a little kid all the way through high school, kind of running around in the woods.
I love it. It's so funny because I was just in Florida where my parents live there now, and my friend from LA came and visited with me, and there were so many thunderstorms. And my mom thought it was like the funniest thing ever because obviously I grew up with thunderstorms. We don't get them that often here in LA.
Yeah.
And so we would sit outside on the balcony with all the windows open and we would just watch the thunderstorm happen. And then we would go on these whole hour-long conversations about the difference in things that I had growing up in DC from LA, where I was like, did you guys not have fireflies? We would walk our dog, and the woods next to us had all these fireflies, and we would go and catch them. And apparently, those aren't really a thing in LA.
Yeah.
And I was
Those
like,
blow your mind, right? They're
I was
so
like,
crazy.
what? That's the first time I realized that museums weren't free everywhere because I grew up going to museums all the time in DC and they're all free in DC. And then I went to a museum when I was traveling somewhere and I was like, I have to pay money for this. And I called my mom and I was like, this is the craziest thing ever I've ever heard of. And she was like, I actually hate to tell you this, but that is so standard. You are the crazy one because you live in a place where it's free.
Yeah. No, I
So,
love the nature connections, those kind of mind-blowing moments, right? Especially as a kid, if you look at a firefly on your finger and it's just lighting up. It's amazing. Nature's incredible. There's a concept or a thought that nature has had 4 billion years of R&D or whatever to perfect its systems, and it's so true. And that translates into fashion and every other industry as well, that I feel like we're learning to become better and more perfect and more like nature in how we design our systems.
yes, I love that. You've described starting Vertical Group as an act of architectural disobedience, which is an interesting phrase. So, what were you trying to push back against?
Yeah, so architectural disobedience plays on civil disobedience, which of course is nonviolent, peaceful kind of pushback. And within architecture, I was just trying to get at pushing back against the norm, essentially, because there's so much just repetitive behavior in the building industry of just doing things the same way they've always been done, not changing. And with the climate crisis, it's demanding that we do change, right? So that's a problem. We need to adapt and change how we do things to become more sustainable because the way that we've been doing things is not working well for us. Architectural disobedience is trying to ask people in the building industry to change and push back against the day-to-day of repetition, and let's adapt and solve this together.
I love that. That's so important. We know that net zero buildings are achievable, but they're still far away from the norm. So, from what you've seen, what's preventing the industry from adopting them more widely?
Yeah, great question. So net zero buildings, just to define that, it's like the energy load of the building, your plug loads, everything you plug in, turning on your lights, running your heating and cooling, the entire energy use of the building all added up together is your energy load. And a net zero building generates as much energy as the building needs on site. So it's typically solar panels. So you just have enough solar panels on your roof or over your parking or whatever it is. You're generating all the renewable energy you need on site to power the building. We know exactly how to do it. Like you said, we are not doing it nearly enough. There, I think less than 1% of buildings are net zero buildings right now, but the building industry accounts for something like 42%, more than 40% of global carbon emissions, which is wild. And I'm sure fashion has a big footprint too, or a lot of people know that transportation has a huge footprint, but think about the entire Earth, every country in the world, every industry. 40% of the entire problem is coming from buildings. So a lot of it's heating and cooling buildings and using fossil fuels to do that. So one of the biggest moves we can make is to use renewable energy. So solar, geothermal, whatever it might be, wind, and power our buildings from these natural sources and get off of fossil fuels. So the biggest barriers I would say are like first of all, it's just education. People don't know to ask for it is a
Mhm.
problem. They've never heard of a net zero building. They don't know what it is. They maybe have even heard of a green building, but there's confusion around what that means. You can't achieve something or get what you want if you don't know what to ask for. People just need to be educated about these issues. But then even if they do understand it and they have a deep understanding of it, there's still a barrier around first cost. Building a building without solar panels is lower cost than putting them on. So that first cost is a hurdle for some budgets as a developer puts a budget together to build a new building. But there's going to be a payback over time, right? So if you have enough time, 5, 10 years, you'll actually be making money off the solar panels. But a lot of developers, unfortunately, have really short time horizons, a couple years. They aren't able to work with anything longer than that. So that can be a barrier for some projects as well on that first cost.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that is a theme when it comes to sustainability a lot, where it's like it might cost you a little bit more money in the very beginning, but in
Yeah.
the long run, it's going to save you money. And I think that's like how I try to
Mm.
investing into more sustainable fashion brands, where it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, the white t-shirt's going to be like $80 or something. And that's maybe a lot of money for a white t-shirt. I totally get that. But in the long run, you're going to have, because you spent more money on it, you're going to take better care of it. You're going to make sure you are getting as much use out of it. And then you're going to wear it for the rest of your life because you're doing that and you invested in something good quality that's going to last you a long time. And then your cost per wear is going to eventually, over the time of your life, is going to be down to less than a freaking cent. So,
Yeah.
versus if you bought a $2 white t-shirt from Shein and then you're going to have to keep buying that $2 white t-shirt every time it gets a stain on it or it gets a hole because it's made out of really horrible fabrics and stuff and not put together well because the garment workers aren't getting paid correctly. And so I think that an example that I've talked about before is the example I use is the set of a movie, but I guess it can really be anything where it's like if you have an office and you give everyone in your office a reusable water bottle rather than buying plastic water bottles, like that's gonna save you more money in the end, even though
Over
the
time.
reusable is more expensive in the beginning.
Yeah. No, I thank you so much for pulling out those threads because there's so many similarities. We're both in the design world. You're from the fashion side of it, and I'm more from the architecture side. So that's what I studied in school was architecture, and there are a ton of overlaps in the thinking between these two worlds because they both involve design, I think. So whether you're designing a garment or a building, there's a lot of the same thoughts. So what you're getting at though is that yeah, there that first cost for quality, you pay more for quality, right? But then you have a better thing for the long term. And that's a trade-off that as a country, the US and I think globally as well, but in general, people are taking the opposite approach of buying the lowest cost, cheapest thing, and then continuing to do that over and over. And that's
Mhm.
creating all these problems of waste. Nature doesn't operate that way if we're trying to use biomimetic thinking and nature as our teacher. Nature recycles everything. Everything's compostable. It goes back into the same system. A tree falls down, it composts, it helps grow a new tree. We need our our systems in fashion and buildings to work in the exact same way. But nowhere near there yet, but we're making some strides to get in the right direction.
Yeah, completely. That's all that matters at the end of the day. At least we're taking those steps, even if it's not.
Exactly. And it's just about how fast we go now. And it's so hard, probably for you too. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. But for me, it feels so slow moving every year. It's like, God, we know what we need to do. We need to all just do it. And it's slow going. But at the same time, there is a lot of change happening really fast, like we talked a little bit about earlier. But how does it feel to you? Does it feel like fashion industry is changing fast or slow?
It's changing really fast in some aspects and then also not fast enough in other aspects. Sometimes I'm seeing so many more, and also obviously I'm like looking for it a little more. My For
Yeah.
You page is going to hit me with everything sustainability because it knows that's what I'm into. But I'm
Yeah.
seeing so many more small businesses and so many more businesses that are like making changes. And I think in America, it's not moving quite as fast as I would like it to be, but makes sense for what's going on in America right now. But France is really kicking right now in terms of the fashion industry. They just released something that is banning influencers from promoting super fast fashion brands like Shein and Temu and stuff. And so I'm like, that
Great.
is amazing. And those are
Awesome.
like big, huge wins that we need. But then it's also the fast fashion industry just keeps getting faster and faster. So it's a little push and pull, but I think the more we talk about it and the more that people get intrigued by it or learn more about it, the more we're going to keep on seeing change. And I know that as much as fast fashion is growing, not so much necessarily sustainable businesses, but inherently sustainable, so are a lot of secondhand apps and websites. Like
Mm.
shopping is so huge right now. And I believe Vinted just became one of the most downloaded apps or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Awesome.
we're getting places. But on that note, the fashion brands, a lot of fashion brands love promoting their like sustainable stores and offices and warehouses, but how much does a greener building matter if the company inside is still overproducing and encouraging overconsumption?
That's a really good question too. And it's complicated, I would
Mhm.
say, because there's a lot of companies that make big negative impacts, and no matter what industry they're in. And we have to decide if we should help green them or if doing that is just enabling them, if
Mhm.
you will. My company, Vertical Group, we had an internal debate with our team about this issue related to us working with a utility in LA called SoCal Gas. It's the local natural gas utility. So natural gas is a fossil fuel, just like coal and oil. And they were a sponsor of our annual Net Zero conference for some years. And they became the biggest sponsor, and they were getting a lot of benefits from that, speaking at the conference and having their logo in our website and marketing materials and things like that because they were a sponsor. And this was maybe, I don't know, probably maybe 5 or 6 years ago at this point. We had a big internal debate around this issue. Are we, by taking their sponsorship money, are we helping SoCal Gas improve and do better, or are we just enabling them? And in the end, we decided that we're helping them greenwash by taking the money and putting their logo on our stuff. We're helping enable them to keep having this negative impact for longer, and that's not what we wanted. So I'm super proud of where we ended up in that decision, and we decided to make a formal policy as a company to no longer accept money from fossil fuel companies. So we cut off our event sponsorship from SoCal Gas. And again, this was about 5 years ago. So we've had a bunch of proposal opportunities that have come up through the years for building projects and things that were related to fossil fuel companies that we've turned down and said no to. And it's been many hundreds of thousands of dollars through the years that we've just had to walk away from. But it really feels like we're doing the right thing by not helping support or promote or help them greenwash in the fossil fuel industry. That's a pretty extreme example with fossil fuel companies, but there's so many other shades of that, or like, and there's gray area, right? So you might be referring to, say, if there's a fashion brand that, say it's fast fashion, right? They might have a big negative impact with their clothing, but with their buildings, if they have a LEED platinum super high performance building, the building then is having a much lighter footprint than it would otherwise. So that's a really good thing for them to have a green building. It will save a lot of energy, a lot of water. But yet you're still then enabling them to market around that and appear to be green in their building, even though their actual day-to-day of all the product they're shipping out is extreme, creating extreme waste and extreme problems. It's a thorny issue. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it's difficult to figure out what path to take to be ethical, but also you got to be a for-profit business as well.
It's like it's everything you just said. It's like it's a tricky thing, and maybe it's honestly just like case by case basis where it's like I never want to not encourage a brand to try and be more sustainable, but I think you can tell when people are doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Everything you were just saying is such a great example of no, we're really in it because we care about this and we want to make a difference because you're stepping away from something that is a lot of money and is a big
Yeah.
deal because it didn't necessarily align. And I think if a company, there's a difference, and you can kind of tell where a company they're releasing like an eco-friendly line, but then everything else in their store
Right.
is
That's
unsustainable.
like what the fossil fuel companies do that
Yeah.
too. They'll have these little tiny, by their total revenue, it'll be like less than 1% of their total revenue is the solar company or something. And then 95% of their marketing is about the solar stuff that they do, even though like
Yeah.
it's all just oil or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think
It's
it's
really
like,
distracting, and that's a huge problem overall in the world is greenwashing, and because regular day-to-day consumers are really confused by it. It's super confusing, even for you and I, right? We see this stuff every day, and I still get confused regularly about what am I looking at? Is this legit? Is this real? Or is this just total BS? Looking for certifications is really helpful, like legit, trusted certifications. If companies or products have those, it can really help people consumers just understand if it's really a good thing or not.
yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a great little piece of advice. And I think, like what you're saying, it's when I watch a video and I realize later that it was AI, and I'm like, dang, I am no better than I'm making fun of my parents who are like, look at this thing
Right.
and it's AI, and then I literally 2 seconds later get got by AI. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I
Yeah.
have no leg to stand on, where it's like sometimes the
Yeah.
greenwashing is fooling me, and I'm actively in this industry and I'm actively doing research about it. So I
Yeah.
can completely understand how, as a consumer, you could, who is not necessarily researching this every single day, you could get confused by the greenwashing. And I think, like you said, like certifications, there's research to be done. Like, if I'm just like, if they are sustainable, they're gonna say everything, and ethical, like they're gonna put it all out there.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a good way of like knowing.
Yeah, just that they're being transparent and showing
Exactly.
their data. Or I love the clothing brand Patagonia, and I they've been a huge model for me in creating my company, Vertical Group, which is 14 years old now. I really look to Patagonia, their founder, Yvon Chouinard, so much, who also was actually born in Maine. So I love Yvon, but he's older now. I don't know. I think he's probably in his 80s. He's pretty much retired at this point. But yeah, what he built with Patagonia as a sort of ethical clothing company, they're extremely transparent to the point where I love that they even say publicly, we're nowhere near where we need to be, right? They share the data and they say, we're still making a big negative impact, even though we're doing all these positive things and programs and sourcing of materials, all this stuff, but they still make a negative impact. And they say that. I love that they're so transparent about that. It's really powerful.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is also just such an important thing to acknowledge, where it's like we're trying our best and we can acknowledge that we're not necessarily perfect everywhere. I think that is so important to shout out in sustainability as well, because I think it can be really daunting to get into this field and be like, I must be perfect and I can never create waste ever. And I'm like,
Hmm.
no, we are human. We're human
Yes.
beings. I'm someone who, again, is a sustainable person, and I care about this and I practice this in my day to day. And every now and then I drink from a plastic water bottle because I
Yeah.
forgot my reusable one somewhere. I'm not a
Yeah.
perfect person. I'm a person at the end of
Nobody
the day.
is.
So I think it's important to God, I used to say this all the time, and then I was like doing really good about not saying it every podcast, but it's like you got to pat yourself on the back for the things you're doing right and not beat yourself up too much on the things that you still need to improve on.
Agree so much with that. It's really about the governments and the corporations being accountable for their own stuff. It shouldn't be, the onus should not be on the individual consumers. And what I've heard is that, I don't know about the truth of this, I would need to research it more, but I think it's from the fossil fuel industry sort of purposefully. I think they created a tracker at one point years ago that was like for individual consumers to understand their carbon footprint. So it was like pushing it back on the individual people to think about their own footprint, which it is important too, but the scale of an individual versus an Exxon, right? You can't even compare the negative impact that these big companies and governments make because they're so massive compared to individuals. So that's where the real change is going to happen. That's where in order to solve the climate crisis, that's what's necessary to fix and change are the big companies and the governments. And if you're focused on individuals, you're not doing a bad thing trying to change individuals. That's still great. There's still positivity there, but it's not going to solve the whole issue. At the biggest scale, it's got to be much larger than the individual. So that's where kind of my work is B2B. So my company's working with other companies to help them green their buildings, a lot of corporate real estate buildings where we're trying to do that, or working with a building portfolio, right? Where we might work with one owner who owns like 100 buildings all around the country, and we're helping them green all those at the same time. So similarly, like a utility program for us, right? We're working with some of the Southern California utilities, and that impacts millions and millions of people that are all within the utility territory rather than just one individual homeowner or something working on one home. So when you have those scale opportunities that can be huge, there's probably, I don't know, you'll have to tell me, Lexi, are there things in the fashion world that are like groups for lots of different companies or something, or industry-wide association groups, things like that, that help to try to change everything at the bigger scale?
Yeah, there are a lot of, oh God, there was a huge loss recently, actually. This organization called Remake that I was a part of when I was in college. And it was essentially just getting individuals who are interested in this together, having them on social media together, and then making, like, seeing what people can do everywhere. And they recently just, I don't think, got enough funding and had to kind of close down, which was a hard hit for the fashion industry, but hopefully there is still other ones, which is great. And I think hopefully there's just maybe room for if when there's a loss, someone else can kind of go in there and create a new one. But there are definitely, I mean, I have found so many amazing like-minded individuals that are able to we're able to connect from like all over the world. And even this podcast has been such a great way of every time after I get up done with one of these episodes, I'm like, oh my God, I feel better. Like I was feeling really anxious
Yeah.
about the world and
Actually,
now I feel
this
better.
this podcast is a great example. Instead of just working with one person, an individual, you're reaching however many thousands of people. That's a perfect example of it too. That's awesome.
And what you're doing in the conference,
Yeah.
anything to get people together to talk about this in like a way that's inspiring and to get people to learn more, I think is just so effective because even climate anxiety is a big topic nowadays. It's something that I experience a lot, especially working in this field. I have so many people that I have talked to that stopped working in the environment because they were just like, it's such a dark place to be. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're telling me.
Yeah.
But I have literally a conversation with one person, or I tell one person that I thrifted an outfit and I make it fun, and they're like, "Oh, I can do that too." And it makes me feel like I'm like really making a difference. And so I think everything you're doing, the conference, things like this, like they make me feel less anxious about our future.
And I can't even remember if we mentioned the conference yet, but Net Zero Conference coming to LA Convention Center October 8th this year, 2026. And Lexi Silverstein will be speaking there on a panel. We're so excited to have you with us.
I'm so excited to be there. So tell us about that and what can people expect if they attend.
Yeah, check out the website, netzeroconference.com. But yeah, just like we're talking about, it's a big convening of sustainability professionals. It's lots of B2B people at the conference. So it's a lot of building industry folks, but it's also broadened beyond that to cover fashion and your world, Lexi, as well as tech and other industries. But yeah, just a big conference. It's over 1,000 people, a bunch of speaker sessions, keynote speakers. We give out awards every year. And then there's even fun things like yoga, and we're gonna have an expo hall. We got puppies in the expo hall this year, and just lots of fun things. But here it's in LA. If anybody can come out, we've had folks from almost every U.S. state there now, and a bunch of countries. So it's been growing and a lot of momentum around net zero, despite the fact that still less than 1% of buildings are net zero. It's helping to spread that message, and change might feel like it's happening slow, but it is happening. So we're just trying to help be part of that.
Hey, do me a favor right now. Look down. Are you subscribed to the show? If you are, thank you, genuinely. And if you aren't, please do it right now. It keeps this content free and helps one more person see through fast fashion's BS. And frankly, they deserve to know. Love it. And can you define, you did it a little in the beginning about a net zero building, but just for our listeners, what should a legitimate net zero commitment look like?
Yeah. But part of the problem, unfortunately, is a lot of the terminology is just really confusing, and there's like multiple terms for the same thing, and nobody understands it. And even people who work in sustainability have trouble figuring it out. One of my big pushes is just to try to simplify as much as possible. So we're still just talking about global warming at the biggest scale. That's the climate crisis. It's global warming. And it's primarily from burning fossil fuels. That's the number one cause, and that we're trying to cut down on. So just that's still the biggest picture of what we need to focus on. And then talking about corporate commitments, so a lot of companies will have a goal for their company to track their carbon emissions and get that down to zero by a certain date. That's typically what a company will. So they'll say, we want to be net zero by 2050 or net zero by 2030 or whatever it is. And so for a company, that's looking at their scope one, scope two, and scope three emissions. Again, getting complicated really quickly. Nobody understands what that means. But it's looking at the different types of emissions and everything for the company. So every impact the company makes, from their team members, the stuff that they buy, the projects that they do, if they own vehicles, whatever it is, their office space, the emissions from everything that it takes to run that company. That's their total emissions, and they're trying to get zero those out by a certain year. Very few companies are already there. My company is one of them. We are already beyond net zero, net positive, and we offset all of our footprint all the way back to day one. The company was founded in 2012, so we've been net positive for 14 years. It's totally doable. Again, just like with building a net zero building, we know exactly how to make companies achieve a net zero commitment. But again, there's only a tiny fraction that actually have done this, and it just needs to become more and more common in the years ahead.
Yeah, completely. Thank you. I think that's a very helpful overall picture of what that is, and hopefully listeners can get a better understanding now. The hard-hitting question here. Can capitalism and real sustainability actually coexist?
Your questions are killer questions. So that's a great one. That's another complicated one because I've thought a lot about this. I have an opinion. People definitely disagree on this. For me, coming out of college, I wanted to make a positive impact and make money doing it. That was my goal in life. I was like, okay, what am I going to do with my career for work? I want to get a job. I want to work. I have to make money, right? And within the capitalist society I live in. But I don't want to make a negative impact. I want to make a positive impact while I do that. I feel like not many people would, pretty much everybody has that goal, right? We've got to make money and make a positive impact. Nobody wants to make a negative impact, but it's about choosing our career path then within that context. So if you work for a company like Wolf and Badger, where your day to day is 9 to 5, or my company, Vertical Group, both of our companies are certified B corporations, which is a super legit certification for companies that are making a positive impact on people and on the environment. So they're for profit, though, they're making money, but they're also making positive impact. And that is such a beautiful thing and totally possible. And that's, to me, that's the future. And this this new version of capitalism that has already has a ton of momentum that can continue to grow and flourish and hopefully, in my view, hopefully eventually replace the current form of capitalism, which today's day to day is companies make a lot of crappy, cheap products. They're just looking for whatever. Their only thought is what makes money, right?
Mhm.
That's their only lens they're looking at is money. But if we also think about our impact on people and the planet, so we have three lenses instead of one, not just money, but money, people, and environment. And we think about all three, you can design businesses that achieve all three, that make very little to no negative impact, and you make money doing it. It's totally possible. And unfortunately, that there's so many of these old legacy businesses that have been around for decades, if not centuries, that establish ways of doing business based on when we were uneducated in the past. We didn't know about the risks of the climate crisis and fossil fuels, and all these industries have had to adapt over time. So we have to make these big changes in the future to get there. But that brand of capitalism, B Corp capitalism, a certified B Corporation, if you want to look that up, I think there's more than 10,000 certified B Corps now. Wolf and Badger, Vertical Group, but also big brands like Ben and Jerry's or Etsy or Method Soaps. A lot of stuff that you'll see on the aisles of your grocery store are certified B Corps, companies that are really doing good. Anyways, Patagonia is one of the original B Corps as well. So it's a great program to research. Try to see if you can implement it at your company. If you work at a for-profit company and you're listening to this, please check out becoming a certified B Corp.
I love that. I think that's so important. I think that, like what you're saying, like, I think it's unrealistic for us to think that we're no longer going to create things. Like, we're going to
Right.
making things, we're going to be selling them. That's the world we live in. But finding ways of making those things good for the planet, good for us, good for animals, good for everything is a possibility. It's an option that's out there, and just hopefully getting more and more people to be involved and do that.
I mean, I'm sure we can think of more examples, but, and I don't mean to, I'm not just trying to be self-promotional here, but just using my own company as an example, Vertical Group, very high scoring B Corp. Our services are to help green and make the buildings we work on more sustainable. And we're a team of 20, 25 people who work on laptops. Our footprint is really minimal, and we offset 100% of our footprint, even including 100% of our travel and our footprint, we offset every year. And so we literally, the only thing I can think of is our laptops that eventually need to be recycled is one kind of negative input. But of course, we recycle all of our tech. But other than that, I don't know if there's any negative impact from my company's footprint. And that's so cool. And lots of companies out there can make huge strides to become more sustainable and even eventually get to this almost no negative impact. There does need to be a lot of work to get there. If you're like an entrenched business that's been around a long time, there's a lot of change management that needs to take place to do it. But if you're focused on it, it is doable and achievable. And I think that's what we're going to just see a lot of in the future and hopefully as quickly as possible. But I think my thought is that we can live abundantly and sustainably at the same time if we design things in the right way.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I really think it's just about having our planet in our front of mind when we're making things of just, okay, we can still make them, but just
Yeah.
let's
I,
cause as
I, I
little
talk
harm as
about
possible.
design. Oh, sorry. What'd you say? I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. I was just saying to just cause as little harm as possible while making things. You
So with design, when I talk about this with architects, I usually say you guys have been focused on two lenses of design, your cost, the budget, and then the aesthetics and what it's going to look like.
yeah,
But you really need to have that third lens of sustainability as well. And if you don't think about sustainability, then it's just not, you can't have good design without it being a sustainable design. It's just not a good design. It's not good for the world. And again, we're trying to mimic nature's systems. So we just need to get designers educated and everybody out there thinking about in clothing design and building design and product design, any type of design. It's not just budget and aesthetics, but also sustainability. There's three lenses to design through.
completely. I love that. Another hard-hitting one. Sustainability has become very politically divisive. Even though healthier buildings, lower energy use, and less waste can benefit literally everyone, how do you think that climate action and like why do you think it's become such a culture war issue?
gosh, it's so sad, right? Like this, it's just science, so it should not be politicized. Let's start with that side of it, just that like this should not be happening. It shouldn't be a political debate. We're the climate crisis is what we're talking about is just proven by science. It's caused by humans. There's no doubt. There's scientific consensus. But then what has happened through the years, and it's been what, 3 or 4 decades now that we've known about climate change. And I think it was one of the big fossil fuel companies, I think it was Exxon, did a report on it. And they've known about it for, I think, close to 50 years now. It's a really long time, but it's follow the money is the problem. It's fossil fuel money, literally many billions of dollars. These are huge. These are some of the richest companies in the world that are completely entrenched in their business models. They make billions of dollars by selling fossil fuels. So they start to lobby as soon as the climate crisis is a reality, right? It's a, as the movie title says, it's an inconvenient truth if you work for a fossil fuel company that the climate crisis is happening, right? And in order to solve this, so the fossil fuel companies, they're so rich and powerful, they started to lobby in Washington, D.C. in the US and everywhere else, every other capital globally around the world for their own interest, right? So they start to lobby and create marketing campaigns and schemes that are massive greenwashing efforts to confuse people purposefully. So that's where the politicization and greenwashing and confusion are created purposefully by people who want to continue business as usual. Super sad and super confusing and really hard to give people clarity and understanding when there's a lot of people out there that are working in the opposite direction, purposefully trying to confuse the public. So
Yeah.
it's tough out there to be a consumer and be hearing these really opposite messaging and some of it outright lies, right? And then try to have to see through that and make smart buying decisions as a consumer.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things I had learned in a previous podcast was that the whole doing your inputting your carbon emissions and finding out how much carbon emissions you produce as a person, that whole calculator was created by a gas company.
Exactly.
And so it's literally meant to put the pressure on you as an individual so that you stop looking at these gas
Them.
companies. They knew
Yep.
about the future of the environment and what it was going to look like if they moved forward like that, but they didn't care. They wanted
Yes.
to they just hit it because they didn't want to change what they were doing. They wanted to make money.
It's the
And
idea of a, I think the term is red herring. I think I'm getting this right. It's
yeah,
just something that's purposefully distracting.
yes.
Yeah, that's just distracting you from what you should be looking at. They're like purposefully distracting us, and it's been
And
working.
it's working.
Yeah, but now we're talking about it, right? So we're helping to educate people by this conversation right now. Yep.
Yeah, because it is good to always see what you can do as an individual, but it's so important to not put all the blame on you.
Yeah.
Do what you can, but remember that at the end of the day, these huge companies, they're the ones really at fault here. And if we can put our energy towards bringing attention to this and getting everyone to know this information, because again, that's something that I learned pretty freaking recently as someone who has been working in this industry for a while. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine if I learned about it in the past few years, how many people don't know about it,
I
which
can give you an example of that too, real quick. I
yeah,
told you my story about how we used to take money from SoCal Gas. I think we stopped, like I said, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I've worked in the sustainability industry for 20 years. The local gas company, SoCal Gas, was so embedded in the green building industry, hosting events at their buildings all the time, supporting tons of local nonprofits. They're purposefully very embedded in the sustainability world. So I didn't even think of them as part of the problem or think of them as a fossil fuel company for years and years until I finally connected all the dots and realized what was happening. So this can be extremely confusing for people.
yeah, yeah, and that's why they do it.
Yeah.
To confuse us. On that kind of sadder, darker note, let's end on a
Yeah.
happy one. You've spent more than a decade working on these issues. What have you actually seen that makes you believe meaningful change is still possible?
Yeah, I do think we're making a lot of progress. We've been talking about it can be a very depressing industry to work in. There's always lots of bad news, but you can focus on lots of good news, bright spots as well. And I feel lucky. I'm naturally optimistic. And I think that really helps working in this space because there are so many downer moments.
Yeah.
And it's just such a daunting problem that we're facing that requires global action. And it's just like, how are we going to do this across every country in the world? The carbon emission, there's no borders up in space once the emissions go up there. It's just this global issue. Yeah, I am very hopeful. I just see a lot of companies reacting to this, even with the Trump administration in place, the most anti-environment president in US history. Literally, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection Agency social media pages literally are posting drill baby drill on their pages, just the complete opposite direction of where we need to be going. But
Yeah.
even in the midst of all that, our business is doing well. We're doing a ton of green building projects right now. The conference is going to be great again this year, the Net Zero conference. And that's just us, right? Everybody who works in this space is continuing to do all this amazing work, even while the tone from the federal government is pulling in the opposite direction. So there's a lot of incredible, inspiring people. This is science based. We know that everything that we're working on is backed by science, so we know that it's the right thing to do, and it's going to make a better world in the future. So I just feel really optimistic that we'll solve this issue, that we'll become more and more efficient and have better design across the board for our clothing, our buildings, everything, and just we're just making a better world.
Heck yeah, we are. I love it. I think that is always so important to remember. I also feel like I'm just a naturally optimistic human being, and I'm like, I definitely get hit with the climate anxiety, but I love hearing the good things, and I think that the more I hear it, the more I'm encouraged to keep going, and I hope that everyone can start to feel that way too and get inspired. And I always try to meet people where they're at. So if they like my outfit and I can go, thanks, I thrifted. You should go thrift
Yeah.
it. I'm like, it's not maybe you don't know that I'm talking to you about sustainability, but I'm sneaking it in there. So
Yeah. I love there's the famous climate activist Greta Thunberg. She's from Sweden. Am I getting that right? I think she's
I
from
think
Sweden.
so.
But she has a great quote. It's just that we already know how to solve the climate crisis. We just aren't doing it yet. And we've been kind of talking about that today. We know how to make awesome, sustainable clothing. We know how to make net zero buildings. It's sort of an education issue for a lot of people. So we're both working on that. We're doing that in this podcast today, and hopefully everybody else out there hearing this can help to advocate and just work towards positive change in your company, any organizations you're part of, and of course your personal life too. But like we've been talking about, anywhere where you can impact a wider group of people is really powerful as well.
Yeah, completely. I love it. For anyone who wants to follow your work, where can they find you on social or anywhere else?
Oh, all right. Self-promotion time. I love it. Thank you. Instagram or LinkedIn, just search my name, Drew Shula. And then our website's verticalgroup.com. That's spelled with a D in the middle, VERD.
Okay.
And then netzeroconference.com is the conference website. But yeah, would love to connect with everybody. Please hit me up.
We'll definitely do that. And everyone check out the Net Zero Conference if you are in California or if you're willing to hop on a plane or in a car. Heck yeah, you'll see
Come
me,
on
you'll see
out.
Drew, you'll see a whole bunch of other
See
amazing
both of
sustainability
us.
people. So you should definitely come. If something in today's episode stuck with you, tell someone. Share it, screenshot it, send it to your group chat. Subscribe if you haven't, leave a review if you're feeling generous, and come find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Lexy Silverstein. That's Lexy, silver like the color, Stein. Everything else lives at LexySilverstein.com. Live a good life and look fucking good doing it, and demand better from the brands in your closet and everywhere else. See you next week.